Hey everyone, this is Damon Santa Maria, and alongside me, I've got my business partner, Jim Garvin. We represent stackinghouses.com. And if you haven't heard of us, we are an educational platform where we provide full transparency into our real estate investing. And so we want to welcome you to our training today. I can see that looks like we have some folks just entering the training room now. But in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. But Jim and I are super pumped because today we're going to discuss some really unique methods that we're using to build our personal real estate portfolios. And I can promise you there's no one else out there talking about these three strategies. But if you are new to investing, please don't be afraid because we're going to break this down into easy to follow steps for you. So I encourage you to take some copious notes. But the number one question that we're always getting from our students and from our social media followers is, how to find great properties that still make sense in today's landscape and as markets change. So Jim and I, we've been doing this for many, many years. And while we can't guarantee that these will be successful for you, we can say that we've used these three strategies to each build multiple seven-figure businesses. And the idea here is to provide full transparency for you because the great thing about real estate is that it's a game that most anyone can win and win big if you have the right tools, systems, and relationships in place. So with that, let's go ahead and jump in. So a little bit about us. I live in Houston, which has been a pretty good market. But there's things like higher property taxes and insurance because of hurricanes, which has made me invest in more favorable areas, which we'll discuss in one of the strategies today. A proud father of three kids and happily married. I'm also proud to say that I'm an ex-corporate sales and business development executive where I actually spent a total of 17 years making other companies rich. And today, I consider myself officially unemployable, which is a good thing. And I laugh because I really have no regrets other than I wish I would have begun my real estate investing career sooner. So I started investing in 2013. And within 5 years, I was able to retire and celebrate my financial freedom day, which was on November 15th, 2018. And as friends and family saw what could be accomplished in a short amount of time, they would always ask me, how I did it and what it's like to be retired from corporate America. And so I decided to write a book entitled How to Acquire Your First 10 Investment Properties. And between the book and what we're going to teach here today, my hope is that we can inspire you to take that first step forward and begin on your path to financial freedom. So before we jump into the material today, one quick disclaimer. Neither Jim nor I are attorneys or CPAs, nor are we providing any type of financial advice. Investing does come with substantial risk where you can lose some or all of your money. So please be sure to consult with a professional specific to your own situation. And the last thing I'll mention here is try not to multitask because you're almost certain to miss some of the key areas that we're going to review here today. So with that, I'll let Jim introduce himself as well. Jim?
Thanks, Damon. And for those listening, I just want to say a big thank you for joining us today, for spending some time with us. We really and truly hope that this is a life-changing, webcast. So thank you again for being here. My name is Jim Garvin, and I'm Damon's partner in the Stacking Houses journey. My background is mostly finance. I come from a hospital finance background and accounting background. I was a hospital CFO, worked on Wall Street for several years, and I hail from the Midwest. So St. Louis, Missouri area, got a wife, three kids, and in short, real estate changed my life. Damon and I worked together in the late thousands, early 2010s, and we did well. We did well for ourselves in the healthcare industry. But there were many bosses. And for me, I ended up traveling a majority of the time and not really seeing my family. And so that's part of my story is, when Damon began to talk about how excited he was around real estate, I was a little skeptical. I had my Series 7. I worked on Wall Street, actually in the World Trade Center. And so I was skeptical of all the benefits that he was outlining, but seeing his excitement, seeing the money that he was making, my wife and I decided in 2014 to buy actually into student housing here in Missouri around a medium-sized university. And it has done quite well. And so well enough that as we expanded that portfolio and built on it, that in August of 2019, we had our financial freedom day. So, that was an exciting day. Coincidentally, about 5 years after we got started, Damon as well was about 5 years after he got started. So, guys, take that as some encouragement that, just two regular guys. We're not gurus. We're not super flashy. I don't drive a sports car. I drive a several-year-old SUV that's kind of, pretty modest. But the point is, we're just real people that have a real story, and there was real success there. And if you dig into the learnings, if you didn't dig into the mistakes that we made and the learnings that we made, we hope that you can build upon that and be wildly more successful than we've been. Today, I am CEO of 5G Homes and Front Porch Homes. We do flips, we do renovations, we do property management, and then we manage the portfolio rentals that we have, which is about 10 million in assets. Just to clarify, if you're here with us today, we want to make this time rich. We want to make it valuable to you. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is equip you, put tools in your toolbox. And so if you stay with us till the end, we want to offer you these three free items to you. There is no obligation. There is no credit card information to receive these three items. These are three absolutely free items, and so I want to focus on that. I want to accentuate that, but you do need to stay with us to the end. The first thing you're going to receive is Damon's book, How to Acquire Your First 10 Investment Properties. And again, to my previous comment, one of the things that I think strikes me about the book is the realness of Damon in telling the story of a man that's on a transformation journey. Right. So it is about how to buy investment property. It is on how to scale your business. It is on all the material items that are helpful in figuring out real estate investing. But it's also a human part to it, which is how do people transition from this American equation, right, of indentured slavery. What I mean by that is, working for others for 50, 60 years to get a pension, to get a retirement, and then hopefully you buy into, some happiness, when you're in your 60s or 70s. Damon's book really explores that concept. So I highly suggest that to people. I highly recommend it. And that's gift number one. Gift number two, sample property pro forma. Now, this is coming from the CFO, accounting, finance guy. So hopefully it'll come in the right spirit. But nothing is more important than understanding the numbers related to your property. And in fact, it can be a whole lot of fun. You may think I'm joking, but I'm really not. Making the money, tracking the money, seeing how these properties perform, seeing how they appreciate, being able to understand the tax benefits is really enjoyable for me, at least. But this sample pro forma is not going to be overly complex. You don't need to understand how to do macros or VLOOKUPs or some other crazy stuff in Excel. It's pretty straightforward, but also very complete in its ability to look at the financial health of a property that you would be looking to purchase. So you're going to get that. You're going to be able to use that, again, free of charge from us. Start using it tomorrow as you underwrite your deals. You're walking around, you're going to open houses and looking at rental property. Finally, a free guide on how to house hack in 2021. One of the things that I really just love about about real estate is just how evolutionary it is, how it can just ebb and flow with the things that are happening and the things that are going on in our world. And so these curated, cultivated strategies that you can take into almost any marketplace in the United States and use effectively are very valuable. And they're things that we're giving away for free. These are real strategies that Damon and I have used. They're not, fictitious, just book exercises, but they are based on case studies that we hope will be very successful for you. So again, stay with us to the end. Excited to give you those three gifts. Whether you never do anything with stacking houses, again, hopefully these could be great assets to help you start your real estate investing career. We want to start today by talking about today's landscape. What is the landscape of real estate? Because it is dynamic, as I mentioned in the slide before, and it is really important to understand the macro and micro events that happen in the world, in the United States, but also the micro events economically that are happening even in your city, right? You see massive amounts of shifts from different places, different cities, places where the suburban area is growing very strong, places where the urban area is growing very strong. And even in 21, 22, and 20, we're seeing people moving from suburban and urban to rural. So understanding some of those trend lines can be really important. One of the trend lines we want you to understand is the shortage of building supplies. By COVID, and we're not going to dig into a huge long explanation of that, but basically there's a supply and demand gap around a lot of the building supplies historically, a lot of those factories and different production places where these raw resources were created or built or being shipped over from other countries. All of those things have been slowed down. At the same time, we were all home for 18 months. You might still be in that place. And people are fixing their homes as much as possible. People are evolving in the types of homes that they want to live in. So all these building projects going on, shortage of supplies, supply and demand issue. And so you really got to watch your costs. The reality is when you go to underwrite your deals, understanding your construction costs are really important. There's a higher demand for single family homes due to COVID. And so I kind of just alluded to it there, but if you're like us, one of the things that happened during the pandemic was a better understanding of if we're going to be at home, if we're going to be in the walls of our home for a longer period of time, if we're going to connect with bubble groups, and again, hopefully COVID is being adequately cured and all the variants are being adequately cured, and we'll never see that again, but it has caused a lot of reflection for families to say, how do we want to live in this space? And so things like workspaces for parents, distance learning spaces. If you're like me and maybe some others, you might have gotten a Corona puppy or a Corona baby. So being able to add, green space and other places for nurseries and things like that. All of these things have changed and shifted how we think about the house, how we think about what's important to us, right? And so what that's causing is some people to improve and work on the house they're in, but also then to look for a house that represents what they want to live in. So there's a high demand, right, of people wanting to move and find new spaces at numbers that have never been seen before, both in amount and in average dollar sales. We talked about construction costs, higher inflation, and this is one really to understand. It's what I would put in the pro column of one of the great things about real estate investing is that it is a great defense mechanism against inflation. What do I mean by that? When you buy a house, the majority of your expense, the highest amount of your expense is wrapped up in that note, right? If you're doing real estate investing, the note itself it represents your biggest, usually largest chunk of monthly expense. Well, what we're doing with that is with a 30-year fixed, 20-year fixed loan, fixing that expense amount, right? As long as you pay it on time, the bank does not have the ability to come back and increase that amount. So the biggest part of our expense where we are limiting, right, the fixing the amount that's going to come out every month, year, so on and so forth. On the revenue side, though, it's not static. It doesn't stay the same, right? As markets increase, as markets become more popular, as inflation comes in, you can take a unit and switch it from 1,000 to 1,200 to 1,400 over time. So why am I saying all this? Well, what happens is if your costs are mostly fixed, but your revenue is variable where it goes up, then your profit becomes the difference between those two. And so we're able to make greater profit, even if the dollar is now not worth $1, but 95 cents, 98 cents because of inflation. I can now take my rent, and if my rent was at $1 for a month, move it up to $1.02, $1.03, $1.04, and keep the value of my money relatively the same. So it is a defense mechanism against higher inflation. A couple other points here. Seller's market, right? I've seen crazy deals. no inspections, no appraisals, cash in 7 days, just as soon as the title work can be done. All these different things piling up in order that this market where there's this dramatic demand, people can put their best offer in front and have it selected by the sellers. So realize that as you go out and you're looking for these real estate properties, that it is a seller's market. And it's just fundamentally more difficult to find deals that make sense. Real estate investing has become quite popular. A lot of people want to get into this space. And so what that means is you really have to underwrite your deals well. Again, accounting point, use that pro forma. So that was a mouthful, but it's really to try to lay the landscape of, hey, there's a lot of headwinds you have to think about when you're investing in real estate, which brings us to the question, Damon, of what should our listeners be thinking about? Where should they go to find good deals?
Thanks, Jim. And as we just reviewed, obviously there's a lot of challenges in the market that we're seeing today. But with those challenges, we believe comes a great opportunity. And so the $1 million question here that we're going to answer today is, what can we as investors do today to find great deals? And so the first strategy that we're going to review is what are called network brokers and turnkey companies. And this is a strategy that I've been using since day one of building my portfolio. And let me first define what a turnkey company is. And these are those local groups that find properties at foreclosures, they go to county auctions, etc. And the first thing that they do once they acquire that property is they go and rehab that property, making sure that all of the systems like the HVAC, the water heater, the furnace are new or like new. They'll typically put a new roof on the property. They'll also add new appliances, landscaping, obviously paint, and make sure that the flooring is in great condition. And then once they're done rehabbing the property, they'll also place the tenant in there. So they go out and market the property, they qualify those tenants, make sure that we have qualified quality tenants staying in your property. And once all of that's in place, they will find investors like you and me and sell it as a turnkey solution. Once they sell that property as a turnkey solution, they will additionally provide property management so that you're not dealing with tenants, toilets, and termites. And so this is a great opportunity for those busy professionals that want a great return on your investment, but you may not have all of the time to go over to properties and fix the leaky toilet, etc. So part two to this equation is I'll introduce the network brokers. And network brokers contract with various turnkey companies all over the country, and they aggregate hundreds, if not thousands, of properties where the local markets still make the most sense. So you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, this is the relationship of you as the investor, and you'll contract in the green arrows directly with the local area turnkey company, but you find those properties actually through the network broker. And so going in this process, you as the investor can then cherry pick those properties that meet your investment criteria based on a number of different factors. So the first factor may be the class, meaning A, B, C, or D. Obviously, A being the best properties. You can also stack rank those properties and filter by cash-on-cash return, total price, total cash flow, etc. And the advantage of using this relationship with the turnkey company and the network broker, number one, you're still finding awesome properties that still provide a great return. Number two, the turnkey companies will rehab the properties, and it's less work for you. Again, if you're a busy professional and you don't have time to be more hands-on, this is an excellent option. Number three, they're going to handle all of the tenants, all the leasing, the qualification, and once the property is turned over to their property management side of the house, they're going to handle all of the maintenance issues so you don't receive any phone calls. Number four, the network broker will assist if there's any issues between you and the turnkey provider. This is a very rare situation, but there's a bit of a leverage situation because there's so much volume that the network broker is sending to all of these local area turnkey companies. It works definitely in your favor. And finally, number 5, the network broker is directly compensated from the turnkey company, so it's no money out of your pocket. Now, there are some cons, and this is really standard in this industry, but number 1, the property management fees are in the range of 8 to 10% of gross revenue or gross rents. Number 2, they will most likely add various fees like tenant placement and markup on maintenance. And finally, number 3, these properties are most likely out of town. They're in areas where they make the most sense, like Birmingham, Indianapolis, Atlanta, etc. And if you live in another area, like let's say California, where the numbers don't make as much sense, it's more difficult to drive over and see these properties. But I will say that over the last few years, I've bought 17 of these properties as part of a long-term buy and hold strategy, and I've been extremely happy with the relationships that I have thus far. And so for some of you that get really jazzed up on the numbers as I do, this next section is for you. And it's a case study of just one of my turnkey properties that I bought back in 2015, and the purchase price was $84,900. Over the next 6 years, it provided a tremendous amount of cash flow, and it actually had very little maintenance because the property had already been rehabbed. It was a turnkey property. And during that same period of time, the property also appreciated a good bit, and it was time to sell so that I could trade up to a larger property. And we could talk all about 1031 exchanges at a later point in time, but effectively, I ended up partnering with a contractor, and I put in over $22,000 for the rehab. But then I was able to sell the property for $172,000. Now, you'll notice here that I did not do any work on this property because I was a working professional traveling and just didn't have the time. But I didn't swing a hammer, no paint, no nothing. So if you look to the right, you'll see that this very simple, boring property made me over $87,000 and it returned 373%. So this, my friends, is the true power of real estate. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Jim, who's going to review some really unique rehab strategies that I promise you probably haven't heard of. So you might want to pay special attention. And with that, Jim?
Thanks, Damon. And as we get into this strategy too, I have to admit that I did not come up with a really snazzy name. I really wanted something that popped or was culturally relevant, and I just, had a perverse lack of creativity. So for lack of a better word, this strategy too, I call the ugly rental or flip. And bottom line, listeners, this is the distinction between cosmetic ugliness and mechanical ugliness. And that's a big difference. What do I mean by that? When you go into a house and you see old, nasty shed carpet, lots of trash, cobwebs, bugs, maybe, not termites, but bugs, dishes, trash, there's just not a lot cosmetically redeeming about the property. Those are the properties I get excited about, as opposed to mechanically ugly, which is foundations with cracks, roofs with holes in it, HVAC that doesn't work well, dated and antiquated plumbing and electric, all of the mechanical things that will end up eating up all your cash flow. Just to be really direct, cleaning a property up and getting it cosmetically pretty is actually fairly reasonable if you can get it, get the price right. So one of our strategies is to go look for ugly rentals or flips. And the rental versus the flip just kind of depends where we're at in our business cycle. But the prospecting of it is the same. And so that's what I really want to dig into this is for you, how do you find properties like this and how to think about the numbers? So before we get into the numbers of this case study, I do want to talk about the pros and cons. So number one, the acquisition cost is going to be lower. And this is simple supply and demand. A vast majority of purchasers out there are looking at this as their primary home or their prospective primary home, and they can't see past the nasty. And so they automatically cancel themselves out. They take themselves out of the equation, and therefore there's less demand, right? The supply is going to be somewhat dictated by what's going on in the marketplace, but usually, especially with the baby boomers at the place where they're at, there are a large number of folks that are now in their 70s, heading towards 80s, that are just moving into a stage of life where they're less able to manage a single family home. And so there's a great turnover of these houses, and so the supply will be high if you can go look in the right places. The demand is less because of the cosmetic ugliness. And then you just got to find those ones in areas that will rent well once you turn it back pretty. So that really captures point 1 and 2 of the pros. Number 3, post-rehab refi can pay you back money. What do I mean by this? So this is a cash strategy. If you're going to use cash to buy a house and then go back and refinance later after the post-fix or the post-rehab appraisal amount, you are going to be able to make a lot of money, or at least get all of your investment back or near that back on these types of houses. And I'll show that to you. The last point is sellers is often more motivated to work on deal elements. What do I mean by that? I talked about in slide 4 the landscape of today, how difficult it was to get your offer accepted by sellers. Well, because there's less demand here, a seller may be more motivated to get rid of this property. They may be more ready to do some things for you, some simple fixes if you want them to. Now, if the house is in the state that it is, you may just want to take sellers' credits or some other, avenues, mechanisms to offset that, but you're going to be able to get a better deal because they're more motivated to get rid of it. What are the cons? You need to fully understand the deal risk, right? You need to understand the distinction between cosmetic improvements and their cost, time cycle versus mechanical, and really do a good job in your diagnostics with the property. And that requires, number 2, strong contractor support. Both with inspectors, the contractors that may potentially go into this. I mentioned this in, other parts, or I do mention this in detail actually in different parts of our curriculum. When you go in for that inspection, take that full team in so you can understand what's going on. Call the general contractor, have them come from the inspection, check out what's going on here, understand how to underwrite your deal costs, and you will be a happy investor. Now, if you already have number 2, if brother-in-law is a general contractor and sister-in-law is a licensed electrician, you may actually be able to take this number 2 and move it to a pro, because that gives you a competitive advantage against the vast majority of people out there who are just starting out. But in the beginning, we're just kind of assuming that that contractor support may be limited at this point. Finally, you want to bring in what can be a con. I'm labeling it as a con. You want to bring in your investors and lenders on what your strategy is with this. When it doesn't look like typical single family purchasing from a primary home perspective, there's some lenders that can kind of question or get overly, reticent about, lending you money because they don't understand what you're doing. So you want to look for lending partners that can handle and understand what investment cycles look like, what a BRRRR model looks like, how to repair, rehab, and refi this. And so ask those questions as you're getting to know your investors. But if they don't understand this, you may have some problems. And so get ahead of that. So let's dig into the numbers. This is the actual picture of a house that my company bought in October of 2020. And what we were looking for here, again, was that ugly house. Now, this property was actually initially found on the MLS. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't find deals on MLS. This is one, folks. You just got to know what you're looking for. And what we had done is gone to one of our real estate partners and said, listen, in this specific area, in this 1 mile square area, 1 mile by 1 mile, can you send us any properties that don't sell for 30 days. And so one of my partners was getting this distribution email. He saw this property and went out to it on an open house on Sunday, went through it, saw that there were many, many issues. It actually started at $95,000 and then contacted me. A couple days later, we went through this house together with the seller. In this case, the seller was showing the listing themselves. So we went through and were able to garner a lot of information about what was going on. Long story short, we got it under contract after a couple weeks at $55,000, just going back and forth negotiating. And that's where the story got pretty interesting, because in our inspections with our inspection partners, we identified a high count of mold. And in fact, there were strains of black mold, as many of you might know, that are very dangerous in this house. So the question you're asking yourself right now is, Jim, why didn't you turn and run for the hills? And the answer is not because we're smarter than anybody else, but it's because we have the right partners. Our mold abatement partners were able to understand this and take care of this issue for about $1,500. But the nuance is, once that issue was disclosed to the seller, they now had a responsibility to tell anyone that would want to buy the property that there was mold. And because of that, they were now even more motivated to get rid of the property, and we continue to negotiate with them. I'm going to flip to the next slide where you can kind of see the financials now. Because of that, even though there was that original contract price, sales price of $55,000 down for the original asking price of $95,000, we were able to get them to $33,600 in October of 2020. And that was, because of the strength of the detail and the information, that we had in our inspections. We chose to invest another $35,000 into this. It included new kitchen cabinets, countertops, appliances. This is about 900 square feet, 2-bedroom, 2-bath. New paint, LVP throughout, looks very clean. That whole process took about 90 days. When we went back to get the appraisal, because we bought the $33,000 with cash. We put in $35,000 with cash, right? So between closing costs, holding costs, we're all in now at $72,000. The bank came back with an appraised value of $110K, which was incredible, right? $72,000 in, $110K in appraisal value. We asked the bank for a loan of $80,000. And so that took care of our $72,000, but also gave us $8,000 more to go spend on our next project. Then it was time to rent it out. And like I said, this is that situation where you're trying to decide, do I flip it? Do I rent it? In this case, there were such strong market fundamentals, and we were actually in a really strong place versus going and trying to buy $110,000 for $110,000. We had $110,000 at effectively $80,000. So we actually landed rents of $10.50 a month currently. Our net, profit, so to speak, was $38,000. Our new equity was $30K, and our cash-on-cash return is close to $43,000. Now, if you go to the far right of this slide and you look at the pro forma view, you'll see that annual rent amount of $12,600. Once we take out the interest part of our note, we leave out the principal because that's actually us, our tenant paying us, right? Paying our money back, building our equity in this property. Insurance, property tax, utilities, property maintenance, repairs and maintenance. We are now making about $5,500 on annual rents of $12,600. And guys, this is the incredible part. We got all of our money back. All of that $72,000 that we put up, we got it back. So it's like we got a property that will make $5,000, almost $6,000 a year forever, and it will only get better, right? That debt load is locked in on 25-year amortization schedule, and the rents are only going to get higher. So this is a real winner. This is a property that was out there this last year, and there are lots of properties around, but you got to look for that ugly rental. Damon, over to you for strategy 3.
So this next strategy, the third and final strategy that we're going to discuss today, is a personal favorite of mine, and I can guarantee you that almost no one is talking about this type of strategy. And they're what are called land contracts, also known as a contract for deed. And so simply put, a land contract, all it is an agreement between a buyer and a seller of a property, which can be land, but most times it's an actual house, like a rental. So there's a bit of confusion on the name, but essentially you as the investor are buying the note to the property and becoming the bank through what's called a seller financing model. The buyer of that property, the person who's going to actually live there, they will have equitable title, but you as the note holder, you hold the deed until the final payment is made. And this is an important distinction because it protects you in the event that the buyer stops making payments. So when I left an old employer, I had a sizable amount of money left in my old 401k. And for the most part, it was just kind of sitting there. But I was able to take that money and put it into a self-directed IRA. And then from there was able to start buying these types of land contracts. And what I love about these deals were the fact that I could acquire notes for well below market value, usually 80 cents on the dollar. They paid me a steady return between 9 and 11%. The owners of the property, they actually own the property, so I don't deal with any of the maintenance issues. And there is a different mentality with these owners. They're not renters, so they take care of the place, they make improvements. And the other thing is that they're responsible for all of the taxes and insurance. And there's some nuance to that. You kind of need to escrow the taxes and insurance to protect yourself as the lender. But that's why I love these deals. But there are some, downside risks that you need to be aware of as well, which include, you're working with folks that are looking to improve their credit, and they are a higher credit risk in general. And because they are a higher risk, they have a higher default rate. And if the owners default, what you'll need to do is go through what's called a forfeiture process to gain possession of the property. But I don't worry about this, and you'll see why in this next case study. So I bought this property through my IRA in 2015 for almost $55,000, and it too had great cash flow and appreciated, partly because I had bought it well below market value, but also because over the next 4 years, it went up in value due to appreciation. Now, this was a situation where the owner stopped making payments and wanted to transfer the property back to me, and this was done through a forfeiture. So after that process was done, I partnered with another contractor to rehab the property and sell it. Again, I did not do any work on this property. And as a side note, the IRS strictly prohibits you from working on any investment within your IRA. So you need to be aware of this. But in the end, I ended up selling the property for $180,000. So I made over $48,000 and close to a 90% total gain in a few short years without doing any work on this property. And currently, I have many of these land contracts sitting in my self-directed IRA. And what's funny is I don't add any more contributions, any additional funds to my IRA, and it actually outpaces my wife's 401k, where she and her employer collectively contribute 14% annually. So as you can see, I'm super pumped about land contracts. I love the rehab strategies that Jim reviewed, and obviously I'm a big fan of the turnkey model as well. So now you're asking yourself, do these strategies work? And more importantly, will they work for you? And I can't guarantee that these will work for you because I have no guarantee that you'll do anything after this training, right? But what I can say that is over the last few years, Jim and I have amassed 8 figures worth of properties. We have been able to celebrate our financial freedom days, and we've been able to quit our corporate day jobs and go full-time in real estate. And so now we have more time to spend with our students, our families, and our friends. And so the question you need to ask yourself is, what if you had a trusted blueprint to help build solid streams of income, even while you sleep, and eventually get you to escape to your financial freedom? What could you do with more money in your life? Could you pay off debt? Could you diversify and secure your retirement? Could you potentially retire early? Another question is, what if you could say goodbye to your current job? What could you do with more free time in your life? Could you travel more? Could you spend more time with family? Could you get your life back? So for those of you that want the same freedoms that we have, we're actually going to help build your real estate business from start to finish. And when we're done, you'll have your first profitable income property. So if you're tired of depending on income that only comes in when you go to work, and you want to master the skills of creating passive cash flow even while you sleep, then we have a course specifically designed for you. So I hope by now it's abundantly clear that Jim and I are extremely excited and passionate about creating legacy wealth for us and our families and creating steady streams of cash flow. And our hope is that we can take what we've learned over the years and take this out to our students. And so we've developed a course that for those of you that want to take these strategies and many more to the next level, we've created an 8-week masterclass program called Stacking Houses Academy, where we're going to teach you everything that you need to know to help acquire your first property, and then your second, your third, and your fourth. And the idea here is that by the end of the program, you're going to be able to find the best cash flowing properties and have a new source of income for you and your family. And so what you're seeing on your screen is the weekly curriculum that we've thoughtfully laid out for you in each week of the course. So in week 1, we're going to help get your financial house in order, which is so fundamental, so that when it comes time to apply for a loan, it's a seamless process and you increase your chances of getting approved. In week 2, we're going to review all the various types of properties, not just single family homes. We're going to cover multifamily, commercial, vacation rentals, self-storage, etc., and all the pros and cons related to each, because as you scale up your business, you may want to diversify your asset classes. In week 3, we're going to walk you through the line item expenses that need to be accounted for and help you think about underwriting your deals. And as promised, you're going to be able to utilize the sample pro forma to help inform you that the deal that you're looking at is a home run or not. In week 4, we're going to help build out your professional team, everyone from contractors to agents to CPAs and attorneys. You need to know the right questions to ask each one of these players so that you're not a solopreneur doing everything yourself. In week 5, we're going to discuss why asset protection and creating the right kind of entity, perhaps an LLC, will help protect you and your company from costly litigation and lawsuits, as well as minimizing your tax liability. In week 6, this is perhaps the most important part of running your business, and that's property management. You need to know the right questions to ask potential property managers and how to minimize costs, all while ensuring that your tenants love living in your property and renew their lease year after year. In week 7, we're going to go deep into the rehab projects and how to manage contractors and how to create a plan that keeps you on schedule. We'll also cover the tenant turn and how to manage the make-ready rehab process to minimize costs and lessen vacancy timeframes. Week 8, perhaps my favorite week, it brings it all together and sets you up to be able to fly on your own. There's so many essential concepts, including becoming a real estate professional, diversification, and having integrity in this business. And if all of this weren't enough, we have some advanced lesson materials, as well as an awesome interview with Jason Hartman, who's a leading real estate economist, and we're constantly adding more bonus material to this section. The last thing I'll mention is that we have hours of exclusive expert interviews contained in the weekly curriculum, which will give you insight on how to work with each professional on your team. So in addition to the 8 weeks of guided curriculum, you're also going to receive all of these tools. And the first one is the personal financial statement, which helps get your financial house in order by quantifying and leveraging your assets and your liabilities so that you understand how banks and lenders view you before applying for a loan. The second tool is all 50 states' residential sales contracts. And no matter what state you live in the U.S., we have that individual state's sales contract so that you can review that and understand each part of the contract so that you're confident making an offer in this landscape, because there's no time to waste when a property has multiple offers on it. The third tool is a glossary of terms, and I'm sure by now you've understand that real estate investing has a wide variety of different terms and language and lexicon specific to real estate, and so we make this guide easily accessible at any point throughout the course. The fourth tool, as we talked about before, is the sample pro forma, which outlines all of the revenue and expenses and allows you to project cash flow. And you want to build this out before you buy. And when you sign up for Stacking Houses Academy today, we're also going to give you a blank copy so that moving forward on any new prospective property that you're looking at, you can fill this out beforehand. Next is the professional team checklist. And as we spoke about before, as you're building out your team, that list of agents and contractors and CPAs and attorneys, you're going to want to ask the right questions before hiring them. And so this tool is a comprehensive checklist to make sure that all of your bases are covered before hiring them. Next is the Landlord Coverage Questionnaire, and this was put together by a leading insurance broker, and it helps you determine the individual coverage that you need for the property that you're looking at. And we've taken it one step further. We've contracted with a leading insurance specialist who has made himself available by phone or by email to answer any questions that you may have. And the final tool here is the Property Management Questionnaire. And so this helps you understand the top questions to ask and need answered before signing any property management contract. It also helps you if you're self-managing your properties as well. But if you are going to outsource it, it helps you find the best property management companies to find and avoid being stuck in a bad relationship that can cost you thousands of dollars if you're not careful. So in addition to the awesome tools that we just reviewed, when you sign up for Stacking Houses Academy today, we have 5 customized guides specifically designed for real estate investors. And the first one is the goal setting guide. And if you're anything like me, I love setting my goals. Every year I set annual goals and then I update them on a quarterly and then a monthly basis. And so this guide helps take goal setting to a whole new level by utilizing the SMART methodology. And as you go through this, you're going to understand why the most successful business people are obsessed with setting their goals. And I promise you, you're going to become obsessed with setting your own personal goals as well. The next guide is the Guide to Maximizing Credit. And as we spoke about in week 1, getting your financial house in order, this guide corresponds to week 1 by helping you understand how your credit score is determined and more importantly, what you can do to raise your credit score. And I've personally used this guide and I've seen a difference in my credit score by multiple points just by implementing these strategies. The third guide that you're going to get just by attending today's review is the guide on how to house hack in 2021 and beyond. And this is one of the fastest ways to get in the game, especially if you don't have a lot of startup capital. And so this includes some advanced methods, especially the BRRRR strategy as well. And the fourth guide is how to manage rehab projects. And this is a step-by-step process guide that you're going to receive to get you started and keeping you on track. And this is used not only for rehabbing and flipping projects, but it's also used for what's called the make ready, when one tenant moves out and you need to do a light rehab to have the new tenants move in. And by implementing this guide, you're going to learn how to manage contractors and avoid bad relationships, which can cost you thousands of dollars if you're not careful. And finally, the last guide is designed for those that are looking to do what's called a 1031 exchange, which can be tricky if you're not careful. So this is a tax code that allows investors to sell one property and buy a new one while delaying paying for taxes. But you need to be aware of all of the time frames and all the rules to avoid being disqualified. So this guide is a roadmap that walks you through this process. So as we just reviewed, you're going to get all of the tools and all of the guides. And now we want to over-deliver by providing you with some excellent bonus materials, starting with these exclusive interviews. And each one of these interviews are with industry-leading experts like top lenders, insurance agents, brokers, turnkey providers, and other investors just out there killing it. And they share their in-depth knowledge, and it's all done in a podcast-type format, anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes each. And the great part about these interviews is that each one of them is downloadable on MP3 format, as is each one of the week's curriculum. So when you're driving in your car or going for a run, You just download that week's lesson or the interview and you're all set. The second bonus is the Ultimate Buyer's Guide, and this is a step-by-step outline giving you the 8 essential processes needed to acquire your first property. So this guide corresponds to each one of the 8 weeks lessons, and it summarizes it into a manageable checklist so that you don't miss any of the critical steps in acquiring your properties. The third bonus is the 5 mistakes rookie landlords make, and you're going to learn from all the dumb mistakes that Jim and I have made over the years, which will save you thousands of dollars if you just follow this guide. And it's filled with some excellent pro tips and the do's and the don'ts of landlording. And to cap it all off, the fourth bonus is access to our private Facebook group, where you're going to join the other house stackers nationwide. And you're going to be able to partner up with those very successful investors in the group. Hopefully, you'll find someone near you. Additionally, you can throw out your ideas and present your deals to the group so that they can review and give you feedback and answer some of the questions that you have all inside the forum. So hopefully by now you can see that we really have thought about everything that you'll need to build your own business. And so I'll let Jim kind of summarize the value of what we're bringing here today.
Thanks, Damon. Listeners, first off, I just want to thank you. At this point, you've been with us for probably approximately 45 minutes, and for you to spend that much time listening to our ideas, listening to the excitement that we have for this curriculum, how passionate we are about what it can do for you, we just want to thank you for that time. A lot of times people say time is money, but time is also time away from family and friends and exercise and sleep and doing a lot of other things that you could be doing. So thank you. But that last statement is the point. How do we get more time in our world today to spend with family, to spend with friends, to not just, save up to go on one vacation a year, and so it's, 51 weeks of indentured servitude to buy one, but to have the kind of financial freedom and lifestyle that allows us to do the things that we want to do. And that's why Damon and I are so passionate about this. You've heard a little bit about our stories. You've gotten some context around who we are and kind of the personalities and what we're like. And so as I kind of wrap up here for today, I just want you to understand that that's where we're coming from. That's what we're passionate about, is experiencing that in our own life and helping you experience it in yours. So let's recap. At the core, the 8 weeks of guided instructional curriculum is the base. It's the foundation, and beyond the foundation, the building blocks that will lead you through all the broad principles of real estate investing and how to think about it. At the end of that 8 weeks, and with all the tools and guides and all the things I'm going to talk about in a minute, you will be equipped to go buy real estate investment property and hopefully buy many of them. The tools. So that's the base product, is the eight weeks. The tools, the personal financial statement, 50 states residential RE contracts. You don't have to go look for it. We've got it, pulled together, curated for you. A glossary of terms. If you're like me, when I first got into this, there were so many acronyms and words that I didn't understand. I didn't come from a construction background. I didn't come from a real estate background. So trying to learn through all that, I spent a lot of time Googling terms. We've pulled together a glossary of terms so you have a resource to just pull out and go look at it and understand what people are talking about, understand what different listings mean, or what an agent means or a contractor means when they're talking to you. That sample pro forma, this is the CFO in me saying, you've got to underwrite your deals well. And so this is not a incredibly complex Excel spreadsheet for those of you who may not be as comfortable there, but it is full and robust in its simplicity. So you're able to collect all the information, it leads you through the process, you get that information, and you're able to understand the cash flow implications of that property that you're looking at. A professional team checklist, a landlord coverage checklist. These checklists are really important. Listen, you can try to soak up a lot of information, right, through podcasts and different things, but having that resource, some of these, just to be candid, some of them I've had laminated and they're in my briefcase. And so when I go into a meeting or I go in to talk to someone, I just pull it out and it's there. It's a resource for me. I know that's pretty kind of probably hokey, taking old school paper and laminating it versus just having a digital file, but that's what works for me. And so that's the power of what some of these tools are. Property management questionnaire. How do you interview a property management company and really get to understand how they're protecting your interest? Some deep questions. That's the tools. This is the guides, goal setting guide. If you're not setting goals, Damon's talked about this. You've heard kind of his spiel on it. They need to be measurable. They need to be achievable. They need to be actionable, and they need to be sequenced in a way that makes sense. This tool will help you with that. That guide will help you with it. Guide to maximizing credit. The name of this game is using other people's money to buy assets and then have tenants, another third party, pay you money to pay back the first party. Okay, maximizing your credit is going to allow for that. How to house hack in 2021, how to manage rehab projects. A lot of you have watched, HGTV, and there's some great shows out there, but the reality is that most of rehab projects do not look like that, in my experience. And so there's a lot to learn there. There's a lot to dig into. There's a lot of guides that'll help you walk through that path. And finally, a guide on 1031 exchanges. Two great stealers of wealth. Please write this down if you're taking notes. Interest and taxes. And this is a way to protect your sale of real estate someday. Right now, we're focusing on buying it, but we're also equipping you to sell and reinvest or sell and buy more by protecting those capital gains, those profits from capital gains taxes through 1031 exchanges. So 8 weeks, tools, guides, bonus material, hours of exclusive interviews, and Damon's really kind of, queued this up well. This is our Rolodex. I'm taking all the most important partners that I have in my business. I'm putting it here in a interview format. We're asking them the tough questions. And then at the end of those interviews, we're saying, hey, where can our listeners find you? So it's not just giving you the opinions. It's not just giving you the advice or wisdom. We are opening up our Rolodex to you virtually and saying, call these people. They're mortgage lenders, they're insurance people, they're property management folks. I could go on and on. Industry specialists who are going to help you be successful. Ultimate buyer's checklist. You make money on the buy. You make money in real estate when you buy, and you got to make sure that as you go through that buying process, you've got a hard-coded process that eliminates risk and it doesn't forget anything. That checklist is going to help you out there. 5 mistakes rookie landlords make. And finally, access to our private Facebook group. Community is so important to us here at Stacking Houses. And so being in a place where you can, pitch around ideas, ask questions, maybe you don't feel like, commenting or uncomfortable maybe asking a question in the group, you can still just read all the great, rich, interactive content that's going to be happening organically in our Facebook group. The last piece I want to talk about here is not a part of the pricing that I'm running you through, but it is a part of what we can offer you, which is one-on-one coaching. Maybe you have that first deal. You put together your sample pro forma. You've done all your due diligence, and you just want the peace of mind of another qualified real estate investor to come alongside you, look at the deal, and give you some advice. Damon and I would love to have that call with you. There is a 15-minute introductory call that is a part of this that Damon's already covered, but these are half an hour to hour increments where you can get on our calendar through Calendly and connect with us. So that's also going to be made available to you, but that is an added cost. So the total value. So okay, how did we come to this? Well, we went through a lot of test groups. We brought people in, people that had already bought real estate investments, people that were thinking about real estate investors, people that were thinking about syndicating big deals, real estate agents, and we said, can you please evaluate this? Can you look at this curriculum and can you tell us? And we kind of sheepishly said, what do you think it's worth? Time and time again, the feedback we got is that this was a master's level course in real estate investing and that it was worth $4,000, $5,000. But as Damon and I sat down and talked about that, we said, is that really reasonable for the average person, trying to get into this marketplace, trying to understand it? And so, we arrived really at a price of around $1,500. But today, that $1,500, that $1,497 is only $997. And you say, Jim, why? Why is it $500 less? No, it's a sincere question, right? And here's the honest answer. Damon and I have a goal to drive our business, to grow our student base to 2,000 students this month. And so as we looked at the curriculum, as we looked at the price points, as we looked at what's happening in America financially, we said, you know what? I think if we could just get underneath that $1,000 ceiling, maybe this is then a more available, a more affordable option for the starting out budding real estate investor. And so that's the situation for the next month. We are going to be limiting or taking down our price, having a sales discount price of $997. And so that price won't be there forever. I highly encourage you to think about taking advantage of that and actually, paying like 66% of what it would typically be just on our regular website. So that's the recap. But wait, there's more. Oh my gosh. Damon, I can't believe we put this out here, but it's true. Listen, we don't want to be gimmicky. Hopefully you're getting the sense that we are real people. We're not gurus. We're not coaches. I don't have a guru voice, that probably sounds like Barry White. I don't look like a guru, but we are real people who have been incredibly blessed and are passionate about sharing that back with you. And so just to try to really help encourage you, help push you over the line, or call you over the line as you're thinking about all this, is a couple more things we want to offer. So about these three. It's a sample pro forma, right? Damon's book and the house hacking guide that I talked about in the beginning of the presentation. But the more begins with this: our pocket lenders for all 50 states. No matter what state that you live in, we have gone and pulled together from our resources, from other individuals you work with, mortgage lenders that we've known, a list of lenders that will work for you. So, you're not going to have to pick up the phone and start calling all your local banks, although that's not a bad idea to go do, to try to find that lender. Here are lenders that we have already gotten all their contact information. They know who we are, and they're ready to take your call. All lessons are in an MP3 audio or also in transcript format. We are very passionate about meeting learners with their learning style. And if you don't know much about your learning style, I'm sure most of you do, go just look that up on Google, right? Go research that, because it's incredibly important when you're trying to digest information to do it in the way that is attuned to your brain. And so in an effort to do that, we have all of our material in MP3 audio format. Maybe you're the kind of person that goes and jumps on the treadmill or goes for a walk or walks the dog, and you want to listen to it. And that's a great way for you to synthesize this information. The MP3 audio is there. Maybe you're the kind of person that gets up with a coffee in the morning and can speed read through 100 pages. The transcript is there. The bottom line, we want to make this as easy and as effective for you as possible. And so we have these added resources. So it's the 8 weeks of guided instructional curriculum. It's the tools we talked about. It's the guides. It's the bonus material. It's all of the things that I just mentioned at the top. It's the access to the community, the Facebook group. And now that we've added on these extra things at the top, this probably has a price point of around $4,600. But we're offering it today for $997. Guys, this is that moment. Let's be honest, $997 is a lot of money. It just is. Damon and I take that seriously. But the question that I would have for you is, what price would you put on getting to your financial freedom day? I remember what that day felt like for me, how incredible it was to walk away, and it's slightly scary for my W-2 job, but knowing that the foundation of real estate assets we had and cash flow, passive cash flow coming in, was going to be able to sustain my family for many decades to come was incredible. And I wish that for every one of you. So as you think about this choice, this offer that you have now, think about that $997. I love my Starbucks coffee. I probably go there way too much, but it's hard for me to go through the Starbucks drive-through and not spend $5, right? If I were just to not choose Starbucks 200 days a year and focus somewhere else, have more coffee at home, other things like that, that's that $9.97. You know, my wife and I, my kids, we go out to dinner. It's hard in America to go out and not spend, we're a family of 5, 50, 70 bucks, you know, even at a cheaper pizza place, right? Let alone my wife and I go out and it's, you know, $30, right? So, you know, when you think about that $20 price point, right? If we would just back our eating out once a week down, you'd be able to afford the $9.97. I'm not trying to tell you about your financial situation. I'm sure each of you is stuck in your own unique place with financial difficulties. What I am trying to stress is I think there are creative ways to be able to afford this and really make that decision to invest in your financial freedom and in your future. But just one last thing to hopefully help you think through and kind of help you call you across the finish line to move forward today is that all of this is risk-free for 14 days. There is a 14-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. You don't like the sound of my voice, you don't like the way the material reads, you're not that excited about our product. We don't want anyone to feel like they did not receive the benefit of the product. And so to that end, we're willing to put our money at risk and say, hey, if you're unhappy, we are going to refund 100% your tuition back to you. So this is it. This is that point. You've been so patient. I want to thank you very much for spending this time with us, learning alongside us. I truly, truly hope you make the decision to choose your financial freedom. And so you are going to get the chance in a second to begin your path to financial freedom by just clicking the next button. And again, guys, thanks so much. Talk to you soon.